Good morning to our hosts from New Zealand, Dr. Jens, and to Miss Linda. I would like to welcome both of you for today's session. On behalf of Manav Rachna faculty and students, I'm grateful to you for taking this session for us. Today's session is on a very interesting topic as to how to convert a high quality qualification to a well-deserving employment. And we have today a very eminent person, Dr. Jens Mueller, who blends 30 years of corporate executive leadership with his MBA teaching worldwide. He's a member of the New Zealand Order of Merit, and he has authored 6 books about governance and global strategy. We welcome you, Dr. Jens, and also to Ms. Linda. From our side, we have faculty and students, especially from Faculty of Management Studies and even others. A piece of advice to all the participants from our side: the question and answers will be taken towards the end of the session through the chat box. I will now hand over to Dr. Jens. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and namaste and good morning to India. From a very lovely New Zealand evening today, I can see the sun is about to set, and as you know, we are nearly COVID-free, so we are pretty much going about our life the normal way, and we hope that very soon that also means that students can join us from overseas. Next slide, please. What I will talk about today is really how we shift from being a student to having good work. And in New Zealand, good work means skilled work. Next slide, please. Skilled work is a term that is important because when you ultimately apply for a work visa or for residence, which many of our students do when they come from India and other countries, then it is the skilled employment that is needed. A skilled employment gives you quite a number, 50 of the 160 required points for residents, and therefore people that want to stay in New Zealand look for a skilled job. A skilled job is a job that is either junior level management or has importance in a firm to go beyond the one person, is possibly a position in which you supervise some people, and it is something that in New Zealand is quite easily achievable because we have a large number of very small companies. About 97% of all firms in New Zealand have fewer than 25 staff. And when you think about in a small firm, we don't really have specialists. We have more generalists because everyone does more than one thing in a small firm. And therefore, it is quite easy to find a job where you do things that are being counted as skilled. It also means that you need to reconsider what many Indian students think, and I've heard that you have to be a specialist in order to get a job. In India, with very many large firms that have very many departments in which you have to be special to be hired, that might be true. In New Zealand, we have fewer than a dozen firms with more than 5,000 people in the whole country. So most of the firms are small, mid-sized. They earn good money. They grow, they hire, and our unemployment rate before COVID has been under 4%, which is pretty much full employment, and we're now well under 10%, and we expect that by mid to next year, we're pretty much back to normal. So by the time that a student who joins us next year finishes in 2022 or later, we should still be the same attractive economy environment that we had before. Next slide, please. We usually have 3 different step ladders, 3 different steps that get you to a skilled job. The first part is that what you study has to be practically relevant. And you probably in your studies right now and in your studies before have seen 2 different ways of how you can study. You can either be research focused, nothing wrong with that, and you then move on to a research track to maybe get a PhD eventually and stay in academia, or you have a practical track. At Massey, we are definitely doing many academic lines of education, but most of our brand is centered around the fact that we deliver practically relevant, practice-centric education. So employers in New Zealand know that when you come from Massey with an undergraduate or a graduate degree, you are ready to contribute and to work. The second part is that we don't teach in isolation of the university, but many of our courses either have course leaders, professors, and lecturers who have great corporate experience, either while they are in academia or before. And we bring in a large number of guests from outside that work with our students. And therefore, many of the large firms know Massey because their key managers participate in teaching at Massey. And the last part is that when you finish some of our studies, not all of them, but some of them, and Linda will tell you especially later about our MBA, you end up with a built-in internship, a work experience in the teaching. That means that as part of the university teaching, you end up doing something that then gets you a reference letter. It gives you corporate work experience, and you end up ultimately being quite valuable. Next slide, please. When we look at what a student takes away from a Massey study, it is usually to get right to work. And as you probably know, in New Zealand, we give students at universities a 3-year post-study work visa if they've done a bachelor or master's degree. And in those 3 years, you have an open work visa. You can go anywhere you want, and that means you can contribute anywhere you want. We have a large number of businesses in New Zealand that trade overseas. You probably know that we don't manufacture anything in New Zealand. Our cell phones come from overseas, our cars come from overseas, our shoes come from overseas. We really don't make anything in New Zealand. That means that we have a lot of trade relationships, companies that work on importing, and pretty much everything that we grow and that we milk and that we get from our harvest, we export. New Zealand exports 97% of its food, and that explains to you partly why we have such a good economy even during COVID times, because even when there's COVID, people have to eat, and we export that food. So what we do at Massey is that we apply the learning to very practical environments. For instance, many of our assessments are consulting reports. That means students go out, they work with client firms, and they make sure that the skills they learned in the classroom are then applied to firms' real-life problems for which they usually get a reference letter, a good next step into real employment. Next slide, please. The practical part that we have in New Zealand, especially at Massey, is incredibly valuable. Very few universities do that worldwide. We are ranked in the top 270 something in the world. So we are absolute world class, but we blend our high-end academic teaching with a practical focus, because ultimately most of our students, well, if not you, then your parents, want to make sure that you get a job and that you're able to pay back and that ultimately you have a good life and a great career. And that means that we want to create students that during our studies at Massey get ready for the job market. That means that practical experiences throughout the studies count, and also making sure that students learn how they get hired. We have sessions on how we practice interviewing skills and how we get a job when there is an interview and how we pick the right job so it fits the visa categories properly. We know exactly what needs to be done for people who come from overseas if they want to stay in New Zealand and get a job here. Next slide, please. We do that by bringing in a number of firms that then have our students work for them. This is an example from 2 firms just from a couple of weeks ago. De Laval, you may have heard about, is a $2 billion large Swedish firm. They work in the agriculture area, have to do a lot with cow milking, dairying, and they are big in New Zealand, of course, because we have 13 million cows and we have a lot of milk that we ship out. So De Laval took a team just a couple of weeks ago as part of a paper for the MBA And you can see here the reference letter that came back. And then we have Morbel as an example, a smaller firm that has innovated a completely new product that we think will be a very, very nice startup product. And our students are helping crafting the business plan to make sure that we have good skills that help that firm. Next slide, please. If you look at this list, this is just from 2 weeks ago. This is over the last 2 weeks, the list of people who are speaking with our students, who are working with us from the outside. Air New Zealand is our biggest airline. It's our only big airline. So we then have a couple of other CEOs there. And if you look down, the number 5 or 6, Peter McBride is the incoming chair of Fonterra, that is New Zealand's largest corporation. It would be like having Mukesh Ambani come into the class and talk to you for over an hour about how he builds a successful firm. That is at Massey more standard than it is exception. We want to make sure that there is a good connection between what we do in the class and what you see outside, so that when you come from Massey and you then look for a job, you end up being credible and ready for work. Next slide. This was from 2 days ago, a COO from California who runs the unbelievable business of marketing the state of California. $200 million budget a year, and he sells to outsiders. Come to California, it's a great place. And a wonderful 2-hour session with our students where Matt was talking about how we created international brand, and he talks about what he does every day. So our students get input pretty much from the horse's mouth, directly from the people who are working, and they can then apply that. Next slide, please. So when you then look at in New Zealand, when you study, the country makes it really easy for you to get work experience while you study, because a student in New Zealand can work 20 hours a week part-time, and we have a minimum wage of about $18, so we earn good money. You will earn good money, and that means that a lot of your living cost is covered by your own work. But more importantly, you can work and therefore make yourself known. You meet people, you show that you're good and that you are valuable, and therefore quite often the first job that a student gets for real is a job where they have made possibly 20 hours contribution a week over many months, have shown that they're good, and they then get a job. That is important. You can also work full-time during the study breaks, and you can work full-time after your study ends and when your visa still runs. In New Zealand, a student visa usually runs about 6 to 12 weeks longer than the actual study, because the country wants to make it easy to give you time to apply for the next visa so that good students can stay in New Zealand. And you have to have a visa, of course, to be in the country, and quite easy then to apply for the 3-year post-study work visa. Most of the programs have one form or another of practical consulting work or practical jobs included in the teaching. And that means that you work parallel, textbook in the morning and practical work in the afternoon. That is a very good format. It makes Massey quite attractive as a hiring place. Companies come to us because they know when you hire a Massey graduate, you get someone who has already worked in New Zealand, even if they're from overseas, because you've had that opportunity during your study. And that then continues in some of the programs with a formal internship. Next slide. I'll just walk you through one program, and Linda will pick up the ball and tell you about some other programs, especially in the business management category, because many of you are from that area. This is the only MBA in the whole country that you can do in 1 year. You only come for 1 year. It is a full-time program, so it qualifies for the 3-year post-study work visa. And during that 1 year, you have included specializations and you have included work experience. And the whole thing is a 180 credit program, very elegantly compressed so that you can complete this in 1 year. You only need 3 years of work experience. If you have more than 3 years, 5 years, you get scholarship. If you don't have 3 years work experience, and by the time we open the borders up again next year, we hope sometime, you don't have 3 years yet, then Linda will tell you about our Master of Management, which is the MBA version without the work experience requirement. The attractive part here is that this is the fastest, smoothest way to move into New Zealand, because you will have the highest possible qualification, so you don't have to go back to school for a long time, and you end up with a degree from an Auckland university, because Auckland is in New Zealand as if you took in India Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Kolkata, and Chennai together, made it one town. That would be like Auckland is in New Zealand. 40% of all the jobs in the whole country are in Auckland. So most students start out in Auckland because that's where the jobs are. And ultimately, that's where many of the Indian diaspora are. Hindi is our 4th biggest language in New Zealand. Our first one is English. Then comes Maori, our local tribal language. Then comes Mandarin. And very quickly after that comes Hindi. So in New Zealand, if you were to get off a plane today, if you could travel and you would get out of the airport, you would look as if you fit in perfectly, because many Indians have made New Zealand their home. Next slide, please. I put a couple of websites up here that give you a chance to look at what kind of jobs there are in New Zealand. TradeMe.co.nz is a jobs is a jobs website, and Seek.co.nz is a jobs website. Go to those job sites, find out what currently, even with COVID kind of in the ebbing phase here in New Zealand, is available in your interest range. There will be jobs, but you will see that there are many more jobs for generalists. That means people who can say we have expertise in more than one area. Then there are jobs for specialists. Last slides. And let me now lead over to Linda van Oostenrijk, who is our India recruitment specialist. She's the manager. She has lived in Bangalore for a long time and would love to go back to Bangalore if there were flights. And I have a feeling that Linda has her first ticket already just about in her mind when she goes back. She will tell you more about the school, about the programs, and then we are very happy later on to take questions. Thank you for your attention, and I will pass it over to Linda.
Thank you, Jens. Hi, everybody. It's good to see a number of you here today with us. I'm really pleased to be speaking to you from New Zealand, but I would, as Jens has said, be even more pleased if I were in India still. But yes, I was based in Bangalore, largely in Bangalore, since May last year. So I'm missing India, and I do hope you're all keeping well and keeping safe. So today, if I could have the presentation shared, please. Thank you. Then I'll just take you through a number of important factors that relate to Massey University. Do we have the presentation, or shall I share that myself?
Linda, you can share it at your end.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Yeah. There we are. I hope you can all see that. This is what I'd like to talk to you about today. First of all, let's start with reputation. Reputation is extremely important, of course. So I'd like to stress how good Massey is. In terms of reputation, we have climbed in the QS rankings, which is an international ranking organization. We have climbed 15 places, and now, according to the QS 2021 rankings, we are ranked 272 in the world. We also have a number of individual subject rankings, and they are important to mention today as well. Again, according to QS subject rankings, for veterinary science, we are ranked 28th in the world. In fact, at Massey, we are the only university in the whole of New Zealand where you can study veterinary science. We also extremely well ranked for agriculture and forestry, we're ranked 29th. For art, design and development studies, we're in the top 100 according to QS rankings. And for education, communication and media studies, we're in the top 150. Now to just talk a little bit about some of our business rankings. For accounting and finance, that subject, and additionally geography, we're in the top 200. And again, for another area of business, economics and econometrics, and environmental studies and sociology and psychology, we're ranked in the top 250. Now, also important, because we've talked about business a lot today and you're interested in business, I'd like to just mention that our business school has AACSB accreditation. This means it's an excellent business school. And then additionally, we're really proud of our reputation for our MBA because that has AMBER accreditation. So that it will tell you how experienced we are in teaching business and how well we're recognized internationally. If I move to the next slide. Now, why do students choose to come to Massey University? Well, there are a number of reasons. First and foremost is our national and international reputation. We're ranked, as you know already, in the top 280 universities in the world. Our position is number 272. Also, we're extremely lucky and fortunate, and our students benefit from this. We are the only university in New Zealand that has 3 campuses. We have a campus in Auckland. As Jens has mentioned, that's where the MBA is taught. That's our biggest city. And we also have a campus in the capital city of Wellington. Additionally, today I'm talking to you from a city called Palmerston North, and we have a campus here as well. We have very dedicated and experienced academics, as I'm sure you can already tell from having listened to Professor Dr. Jens Mueller. We have a very practical and applied learning, getting students ready for the workforce. And that's so important for our Indian students because many love to come and study a very good qualification, but then they also like to stay on and benefit from the 3 years post-study work visa that is in place for bachelor degree or postgraduate diploma or master's students. We have a very welcoming and supportive environment. It's really important to Massey to be able to support our students, whether they are international or domestic students. We have a very diverse student body. So imagine you come and study with us, you're going to meet lots of different nationalities. We have a total of about 34,000 students, and that includes 5,000 international students. And we're really happy that we have 369 students from India currently studying at Massey. We have very good connections with industry and professional organizations and local communities. And you've already heard a bit about that from Jens Mueller, about how the MBA introduces businesses to our students, and they have the benefit of that knowledge, not only from our academics, but also the knowledge of the experts that we are so closely connected to. If I move to the next slide, you hopefully are all familiar with the map of New Zealand. And here you can see the cities where we have a campus: Auckland, Palmerston North, and Wellington, all on the North Island of New Zealand. We have, at Massey, we divide ourselves into what we call colleges, and we have many, many different programs available, including humanities subjects, science subjects, creative arts, health, and then, very importantly today, our business programs. Now, we teach a whole range of different types of subjects in the business school. For example, you could study a Master of Management. That would be a 1.5-year degree. We don't need any work experience for that. And normally any undergraduate degree, as long as it's successfully completed, would be fine for entry. So a good choice for you within the business field at Massey, a whole range of different majors that can be chosen, different subjects, as well as, of course, the MBA, the one-year very prestigious MBA. If I move to the next slide, you will see great news for when students can come and study on campus. There is accommodation available in Auckland, in our Auckland campus, and also in our Palmerston North campus. This is university accommodation, really good quality accommodation. You never have to share your bedroom. That's just for you, but you may share the bathroom and kitchen facilities. And we do have accommodation close to our Wellington campus. The Wellington campus is much smaller, so the accommodation is not on campus, but it is close by. Also, I'd love to talk to you about scholarships, because this is good news. We have excuse me, a number of different scholarships. We have some inbuilt scholarships for the MBA that Jens has already mentioned, and the value is 1 lakh of each particular scholarship. So if you've got a good mark in your undergraduate degree, then there's a scholarship for the MBA of 1 lakh. If you have 5 or more years work experience, there's another scholarship within the MBA, which is again 1 lakh. And if you have an undergraduate degree and a master's, excellent news again, because there's another scholarship available for the MBA of 1 lakh. Then additionally, we also do provide scholarships in other areas. For example, if a bachelor degree undergraduate student is studying engineering or food technology, then there's a scholarship, and the value of that is 1.5 lakhs. Additionally, in our business school, we have other scholarships available for undergraduate students or graduate diploma students or postgraduate diploma or master's students. And the value will depend on how long you're studying your degree, but it is a very good value per year, which is about 2.5 lakhs. In the course of 1 academic year, you study 120 credits. Humanities, if anybody were interested in humanities subjects, again, scholarships available at all levels: bachelor degree, graduate diploma, postgraduate diploma, and masters. And again, the value is 2.5 lakhs per 120 credits, in other words, per year. If a student is doing a creative arts subject, then we have scholarships available at undergraduate level, and the value is again 2.5 lakhs per 120 credits. Any student who's studying a master's with research, with a lot of research in that degree, there's a possibility of a scholarship. It is a very good valued scholarship, very competitive, but that's about 7.5 lakhs. And finally, for any student who's doing PhD study, there is also a possibility of another excellent scholarship. That value is about 13.5 lakhs per year, which would cover both the tuition fee, which in New Zealand is very low for PhD students, and it would cover the accommodation costs. Now, all of these scholarships that I've mentioned are awarded on academic merit, so that means you'd need a good result from your studies to be able to be awarded a scholarship. The next slide shows how much emphasis we put on student support. We have an office where students can renew their visas if they're studying here on campus. They can renew their visas if necessary on campus, and they don't need to go to a visa office. So that makes it very straightforward for students. We also have good health facilities for students in case there are any health checks that are needed. We also provide, academics provide a lot of support for students, and currently our students overseas are studying by distance, and there's even more support offered to enable those students to benefit from our very high quality distance education, because at the moment, of course, international students can't actually come and study on campus. The final slide shows you some examples of what student life is like here in New Zealand and at our campuses, Massey campuses. We have on every campus, we have accommodation. As I mentioned, near to the Wellington campus, we have accommodation as well. We provide excellent catering facilities for students who maybe don't want to cook their own food and benefit from our restaurants. We also have lots of clubs and societies, and that's really exciting for students to be able to benefit from that. For example, last year, Indian students here in Palmerston North got together and created a Namaste Club, especially for both Indian students, but any other students who may want to join that club. And that's just one example. If you love sports, if you love cricket or football or any kind of sport, there are so many different sporting clubs as well as cultural clubs. And one of the pictures you can see here is of our accommodation on campus in Auckland. And I've already mentioned that the accommodation is such a good quality. You would always have your own bedroom. You never have to share that. Well, that brings me to the end of this presentation.